The downside of having two screens is I'm always don't know which way to look. And so you might see me shaking my head back and forth a lot. All right, here we go. So as I mentioned, today we're doing quick introductions for about 10 minutes, and then I'll be passing off the mic to Carmen to give a presentation on what on earth comprehensive planning is. And then I'll just give a little overview on engagement with some discussion. We'd love to hear from you all in terms of how do we make sure we do a good job with engagement, and we'll wrap up the presentation and for next steps as well. And so with that, we already did our icebreaker, and so I'll pass it off to Carmen.
Great. Thank you, Ben. As a reminder, my name is Carmen. I'm a planner with Burke, and I'll be talking a bit about what is comprehensive planning, why do we do it, and what are some of the key important considerations that go into updating a comprehensive plan. Ben, if you could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So most counties and the cities and towns within them are required to plan for their fair share of growth under the state's Growth Management Act, or GMA. And how this works is that the state's Office of Financial Management, OFM, develops population projections for the state and the counties. And then all of the fully planning counties work together with their cities to determine how that growth should be directed. So this is really a state and regional effort. And you can see the map of the state on the right-hand side shows sort of the planning status of all of the counties in the state. So the counties that are highlighted in green are required to plan under GMA. The counties that are highlighted in blue are not required, but they have decided to opt in and are fully planning, similar to the green counties. And then lastly, those counties shaded in gray are not required, and they've also not decided to opt in. And therefore, they're only required to plan for natural resource lands and critical areas. And so the counties that are fully planning, again, those green and blue counties, make up the vast majority of the state's population. So between them, it's about 95% of the state's population is fully planning under GMA. Next slide, please. So in addition to being required by the Growth Management Act, there are a number of other reasons why cities and counties want to plan. Comprehensive planning is a really great way for jurisdictions to think about and document how they should grow and change over time, what they should offer their current residents, future residents, businesses, anyone who's visiting Lakewood, the current and future. And so we've got a couple of projections in that top bullet point there. So you can see as of 2020, Lakewood had over 63,000 residents living in the city. And in the planning period that we're currently planning for in this comprehensive plan update, 2020 to 2044, the city's anticipated to add over 9,000 housing units. You can see about 2/3 of those being multifamily housing units, and over 9,000, close to 10,000 jobs. So this is considerable growth coming into the city, and we want to make sure we're actively planning for it and trying to make sure that the growth is occurring in a way that's in line with the community's vision and goals and values. So one of the key functions of a comprehensive plan is that it helps guide decision-making on important topics. So the comprehensive plan guides decision-making and investments and regulations on really important topics in the city, covering everything from housing, jobs, transportation, parks, natural resources, climate, infrastructure, utilities. And so ultimately, the goal with comprehensive planning is really to maximize everyone's health, safety, economic well-being, and really keep Lakewood a great place to live, work, and visit for anyone who's spending time in the city. Next slide, please. So now that we've talked a little bit about the why jurisdictions are planning, we'll go into more of the what. So what exactly is a comprehensive plan? And a comprehensive plan is a policy document that really encapsulates a community's vision and framework for growth. And so here we're talking about vision and framework over the next 20 years in the city of Lakewood. And a comprehensive plan establishes policies to guide that future growth and development in a way that is consistent with the community's vision. So the right-hand side of the slide here, that graphic shows the relationship and sort of hierarchy between different levels of planning policies in the state of Washington. So that top outer ring is the state law, the Growth Management Act that we talked a bit about a few slides ago. And that really sets the state framework and vision framework for planning. Underneath that is the Vision 2050 and the multi-county planning policies, which are the Central Puget Sound's regional growth strategy. And the Central Puget Sound is comprised of Pierce, Kitsap, King, and Snohomish counties. So this doesn't always apply to comprehensive plan updates outside of those 4 counties and the cities within those counties. But given that Lakewood is in Pierce County, Vision 2050 and these policies are relevant in this update. Underneath that, nestled, there's county-wide planning policies, which are a set of policies for a given county, so Pierce County, and they apply to the unincorporated parts of the county, but also all of the cities and towns within them. And they really set a framework for how population growth and infrastructure investments should be distributed and allocated throughout that particular county. Lastly, nestled there in the middle is local comprehensive plans. This is where Lakewood's comprehensive plan lives. And just a note on that is local comprehensive plans they need to be consistent with all of these different levels of policy. Next slide, please. Great, thank you. So comprehensive plans cover a really wide range of topics. And in a comprehensive plan, these are called elements. Each element has specific goals and policies that are relevant to that topic, as well as a lot of supporting background information and analysis that helps inform some of those goals and policies. So there are a certain number or certain elements that are required by the state to be included in every comprehensive plan. Those you'll see on the left-hand side. But then the cities and counties also have the opportunity to add additional elements based on or in response to certain local conditions. And so you can add to include these other elements, which on the right-hand side are the elements that Lakewood has opted to include. And you'll notice that there are sub-area plans, which are sort of a mini comprehensive plan for a specific part of the city. So you'll see Tillicum there, as well as downtown and Lakewood Station District. And a final note is that as part of this comprehensive plan update, the Tillicum neighborhood plan will also be updated, which is really exciting to work with you all on that as well. And while all of the elements are, oh, could you go back one, please, Ben? Thank you. All of the elements are important. The land use element is really the element that sets the direction for future growth in Lakewood, and this is primarily done in the form of a future land use map, which is implemented by the city's zoning code and map and policies. And last note on elements is that whether or not they're required or a city has decided to include an element, they're all comprised of these specific goals and policies that are really used to help guide day-to-day decision-making on these important topics by your elected officials and also your local government staff. Next slide, please. So a key feature of comprehensive plans is that they need to accommodate those adopted growth allocations that we talked about in the first couple of slides. And so we wanted to highlight on this slide and the next one, some of those key considerations that go into making sure that Lakewood's comprehensive plan can do this. And so these are in no particular order, but we'll just start with the first one. So land capacity analysis and zoning. We're going to be looking at whether or not, or does Lakewood have enough potentially developable land under its current zoning to meet its adopted targets. So this is done through what's called a land capacity analysis, where we'll look at current zoning as well as local development potential and local conditions to calculate remaining capacity for future development in the city. As far as Housing will look at how much and what kind of housing is needed to support Lakewood's current as well as its future population. Similarly with jobs, how many, what kind, where are jobs needed to support Lakewood's current and future population. Next slide, please. So transportation, the Growth Management Act, GMA, requires adequate facilities in place to support growth targets. So for transportation, we'll be looking at what transportation improvements are needed and where to support the growth plan and make sure that levels of service, standards are being maintained. And that is similar with the capital facilities, utilities, and public facilities. What services and upgrades are needed and where to support the growth plan and maintain level of service standards to ensure that Lakewood has adequate parks, schools, fire, police, utilities for its residents and visitors. Lastly, climate change. This is a new element that is being required by the state in 2023. And so on climate change in Lakewood, we'll continue to build off of all of the great work that has been done thus far on the energy and climate change implementation plan, and we'll continue to build out that work and identify ways that Lakewood can reduce greenhouse gas emissions and adapt to changing climate. Next slide, please. Last point on comprehensive planning is we just wanted to provide a note on schedule. So the map on the right-hand side shows the timeline for all of the counties in Washington when they need to have their plans updated by. So we are in that burnt orangey color, which is due the end of 2024. So Lakewood's comprehensive plan update will need to be adopted by its city council by the end of 2024. So that is just to give you an idea of kind of the lifespan and trajectory of this project. We're looking into that through the end of next year. Great. So now we'll just open it up to questions or comments on comp planning specifically.
Alex, and then we'll go to David.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. Just one question on the buildable land portion and how that evaluation works. So I know it's based on current zoning. Does that include things that are upcoming, as in HB 1110, and then does it also take into account like possible future zoning changes where maybe things are scaled up from quadplexes or sixplexes, or is it just what the zoning is right now, what can go there under the current law?
That's a good question. Actually, sorry, Carmen, do you know the answer to the question?
I can certainly look into and get back to you on exactly what would go into that analysis.
Yeah, I would add too, I am not familiar with the buildable lands analysis specifically, but to speak to you mentioned HB 1110 and with 1220 as well. These are new for those who don't know, these are new housing bills that were passed to essentially increase housing density in cities for Washington State, but also have set affordability targets at different income levels as well. And so cities are now required to plan for not just housing targets, but affordable housing targets as well. And so all that will be included with this comprehensive plan update. But definitely I can follow up with more information on the buildable lands report specifically. But ideally, by the time the plan is adopted, it would incorporate sort of the city's targets at providing housing at different income levels, along with I assume without doubt that there'll be future land use considerations as well. But I can follow up on the buildable land report specifically.
And Ben, if I could add a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
So the 2021 Buildable Lands Report found that Lakewood did have enough land capacity at the time for its 2040 for population allocations. However, because of the state legislative bills that have passed since, there are a number of things that have changed. So House Bill 1220 from a couple of years ago now requires jurisdictions to not only plan for just a total number of houses, but by area median income brackets, and also 1110 and 1337, which is all about accessory dwelling units. None of those were taken into account in the last buildable lands report. So between now and the end of 24, Lakewood does plan on incorporating all of those bills requirements into our comprehensive plan and future growth target projections. But the next buildable lands report probably will read pretty different from the one in 2021 because of all the changes in state law. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie. David.
Yeah, I just want to know if these PowerPoint slides now and going forward might be available.
Yes, we can share them.
Thank you.
We're also
And they
taking
will be
notes as
posted
well.
on the city's website as well.
Any other questions before we move on to the next section?
Yes, one question. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hey, Bob. Good to see you.
Hi. Yeah, my apologies for technical difficulties. I caught the first part of the meeting, and then anyway, I'm here. I want to be sure that we're absolutely clear, both in Tillicum and Woodbrook, with respect to any runway issues, either from Gray Army Airfield or McCord. I think we are, but that would interfere with any kind of vertical consideration going forward.
Just so I'm understanding, the question was making sure we're thinking about sort of the airspace requirements because of all the airplanes flying from the fields from McCord.
Yes, it's
Okay.
been an issue for Lakewood, a real challenge in some respects. I suspect this is not an issue here, but want to be sure we're clear about that.
Yeah, I think we could definitely think about in terms of like when thinking about the neighborhood planning process is like what are sort of like core issues and challenges or like feedback that we're getting. And so if this is part of this process will include like, hopefully a really strong engagement effort. And so that information will be captured through this planning process. Awesome. Well, if there are any other questions, feel free to reach out. This presentation does include all of our contact information as well, and you all should have my email too. And so happy to chat more around other things as needed. So look, I have this next section. Carmen mentioned at the end of her presentation that the comprehensive plan needs to be adopted by the end of 2024. And so I'll be going over a little bit more in terms of expectations of how we'll get there through next year. And so even though end of December 2024 feels far away, I'm actually a little anxious because it feels really close. And so you'll see a lot of different, and we'll sort of dive into sort of what the next few months will look like. I just want to acknowledge some of the work that we've done to date already. And so we've worked with some of you already before on timing conversation on an implementation plan for the city's energy and climate change chapter. And so to provide context within the comprehensive plan, the work that we've done through June of this year helps feed into one of the elements for the city's comp plan as a whole. And so, but also kind of set a stage in terms of figuring out how we can continue to advise, say, Lakewood on best practices for community engagement as well. And so some of the takeaways from that survey was a survey around housing and climate change. We've done over 12 interviews, not just for this energy and climate change chapter, but for some early work around updates to the housing element as well. We've had about 4 focus groups this year as well, with Springbrook Connections, the Affordable Housing Consortium, Lakewood Alliance, and the Lakewood Community Collaboration Group. And we've also participated at local events at Clover Park Technical College and the Lakewood Youth Summit. Actually, they were both at the Technical College, but as a way to engage youth, but also engage students at the college as well. Looking through the end of this year, there are sort of the big deliverable that we are working towards right now is an existing conditions and trends report, which is for the Tillicum neighborhood. And so what that means is it's just a report that gives some basic information around demographics, around the built information around the built environment, sort of acknowledging work that's been done to date within the neighborhood, to set a baseline understanding of what's going on in the Tillicum neighborhood before we work towards policy recommendations or updating recommendations from the last plan update. And so, as I mentioned, we have two work groups essentially going, one focused on the neighborhood plan, one focused on the comp plan as a whole, but there will be a lot of opportunities for synergy between both engagement efforts as well. And so the Tillicum group will be meeting in the middle of October again, sometime next month to talk more about what we learned so far with the existing conditions trends report. But we'll also be doing some engagement hosted by Rebuilding South Sound at the resource fair in Tillicum on the 10th as well. And so just kind of acknowledging the Tillicum group will be meeting twice through the end of this year. And the comp plan group will meet one more time this year before the year ends. Looking ahead to the start of next year, through June of 2024, we will have a draft neighborhood plan a draft Tillicum neighborhood plan by mid-February, with a final plan completed by May. With regards to the comprehensive plan itself, we actually have to have working towards a draft of the current plan completed by May as well. And so it's sort of a big deadline for us. And so both work groups will be meeting through June of 2024 to dive deeper on specific topics, but also help shape the vision for understanding community goals and values for the comprehensive plan as well. And so, I forgot to mention this in the last slide, but through the end of this year, there'll be a lot of conversations around what a community vision is. And then during this 6-month period, we'll be doing an environmental impact statement review, which really looks at looking at all this growth that's happening in Lakewood, how is that growth going to impact both the built and the natural environment as well. And so making sure that practice sustainable, we're not encroaching on critical areas, and thinking about sort of impacts to air and water quality as well. So I acknowledge too that during this time we'll have a couple open houses and opportunity for additional engagement opportunities, such as focus groups, individual meetings, and as needed conversations around specific topics as needed in the comp plan as well. Lastly, through the start of summer to end of year, really kind of working towards presentations to the Lakewood Planning Commission and City Council through the end of December, with some public comment and follow-up, looking towards adoption of the plan by December of 2024. And during this time too, we'll be following up with you all in terms of updates to the plan, and answer any additional questions as needed as they come up. And so really, if I were to sum up this engagement process, like these work group meetings are sort of the tip of the arrow of our conversations, but really they're meant to be a circle back point as well. As we do additional engagement and talk to more folks, we'll be sharing that feedback with this group and work with you on helping advise on some of the questions that we have, advise on the questions that we should ask, during this comprehensive planning process. And so with that, oh yes, yeah. And just also note in that vein that we are always looking for more folks to participate in this process. And so if you know that there are organizations that we should be engaging through focus groups, having visual meetings, or great places for open houses, definitely we welcome all the feedback, and we're definitely happy to make time to speak with anyone as needed. And so again, as I mentioned, that this work group is not meant to be sort of the end of all of our engagement conversations. It's really meant to you all to help advise us as using our people power to sort of reach out to additional individuals and making sure that feedback that we're hearing is being reflected in policy and updates to the comprehensive plan. I also wanted to highlight a couple online resources, and I'll share these. These will be shared with the notes as well, but just a link to the website where you can learn more about what's happening with the comprehensive plan. Lakewood Speaks is, I believe, the online portal where you can learn meeting minutes and see all the meetings that have been happening. And the Lakewood Equity Index is actually a new online tool that Tiffany just shared with us. This was done by another consulting firm, but my understanding of the index is that you can open it and look at different parts of the city of Lakewood and get some pretty basic information around demographics, public safety, economic jobs, housing. So it kind of gets you a snapshot around sort of how different parts of the city are, whether they have high job access or low job access, healthcare insurance. And so it's a pretty fun tool. I couldn't get to work at first, Carmen. I realized what I was doing is I forgot to select a geography. And so it gets to, so you can look at a neighborhood and get a neighborhood picture of what's happening as well.
And Ben, if I could just toot my own horn a little bit more on
Yes,
that one.
do it.
It's brand new, so I'm still really happy about it, the fact that it's launched. But yes, there's a map and there is also data. And so unfortunately, just the way the tool is built, the map and the data right and side left of the screen don't immediately change at the same time if you select something. So please check the instructions under the letter I on the left side of the map, and it'll show you how to change the map to reflect what's on the data information. And yes, you can get stuff citywide. You can also get it by census tract. Thanks.
Thanks, Tiffany. And I'll close that too, that there are a lot of people working on this project, and just want to share all of our contact information here in this PowerPoint as well. And you can always reach out to any of us with any questions that come up during this planning process as well. And so, yeah, that concludes our presentation. So I'll just check in for questions before I had a couple of questions for you all as well. Yeah, David.
Ben, thank you very much. I just want to make available the second Tuesday of every month is our neighborhood association. So as you think appropriate, we're quite happy to make whatever time available that you want to present to Tillicum.
Thanks, David. Any other questions around sort of what third end of 2024 looks like, or any questions or anything else that we've discussed so far? Awesome. I guess we nailed it. Well, I would love to hear from you all now a little bit. And so, I think I'll just start off by asking, like, I know for each city that we work with, a goal that always comes up is like trying to figure out like what good engagement looks like for each jurisdiction. And so we'd love to hear from you all in terms of, as we think about our additional engagement strategies, what advice do you have for us to make sure that we're thinking through around good engagement, that we're leading with equity with our engagement practices, and ensure that we have good representation in our community values? Tanisha. You're so. Oh,
there we go. Sorry, I'm working with two screens, and so, anyhow. So my question is community engagement, because I'm not seeing anybody here really from the neighborhood that's not connected to an organization. And so oftentimes organizations have their own mission, visions, and values, and oftentimes they can even be political. So my question is, who from the those neighborhoods that we're specifically looking to impact are a part of this?
Yeah, so with this suburban planning process, we do have a focus on the Tillicum neighborhood, and we are forming a specific steering committee for the Tillicum neighborhood planning process, specifically neighborhood overall. And so The city already has a neighborhood plan for Tillicum, but it's due for an update. And so we do have representation from the Tillicum neighborhood here today. And with regards to reaching out to other neighborhood groups, definitely happy to reach out to other folks as needed. I think we're able to connect with maybe one other group so far for an interview. But if you have any recommendations of specific neighborhoods where you think we definitely need to spend more time in, like this is the kind of like feedback information that we're looking for at this time as well.
Yes, I think my question is more around what people are a part of this that are not organizationally connected. So people, regular, everyday people from the neighborhood who live there, who are not politically motivated, who don't have, all of these other extra connections, but people who actually live in this neighborhood.
Yeah, that's a great so I'll say like for sure, like as part of our like Outsiders work group, we want to host like an open house so that folks can come to these, come and learn at their own pace. We're also hoping to do we could potentially explore doing some pop-up events too, where we go participate at local events to talk to just event attendees as well, or places where people gather. And so, for example, in October, we'll be at a community resource fair in the Tillicum neighborhood. And so reaching out to homeowners and I have to say too that Ted has been doing a great job talking to small businesses as well, and through a lot of literal legwork. And so these are part of so I guess those are some opportunities too that we're hoping to like reach out to just folks who are not affiliated with organizations.
Okay, so will those be engagement pieces or open house pieces be something where the comprehensive plan has kind of been formed and presented? Or would this give them the opportunity to have some real engagement and some real feedback into the plan before it's formulated? Because basically what my mindset is saying, here we have a plan for you. What do you think about it versus how can we bring you in to tell us really what you need? Yeah.
I agree. I think there's no point in presenting something if it's already been decided. And so that's why I think this first 6 months of 2024 is pretty important, because while we're having discussions within our group around like housing, climate change, I think the feedback that we get from you all will help drive activities and questions that we ask the larger public as well. And so like, again, like having open houses prior to May would be critical, or before a draft conference plan is submitted, is critical, because those are some really great chances for additional public feedback. And my hope is that with working with you all, that we will be able to reach out to additional individuals who may not have been involved with city engagement in the past, or not as familiar with additional city resources that are available.
Ben, I have an idea that David may be able to comment on as well. We have a new supervising librarian at the Tillicum branch at the community center. And maybe with a conversation with her, she might be interested in having some kind of a contemporary bulletin board, if you will, just with regard to this process over the next year. And there are computers available there as well. So there would be an easy way to gather concerns and ideas and sort of funnel them to you from the community along the lines of Tanisha's concern about outreach, if you will. So that might be something we could do that would be fairly simple, straightforward, and open to people to participate.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. Thank you, Bob. I also want to circle back, Tanisha, if you had any additional follow-up questions, making sure I answered your question fully as well.
No, you did. And I love Bob's idea of bringing in community.
I will also just add to Yusha, if you have any ideas that you'd love us to explore, we would love to hear them. I think one of the reasons why we're convening this group together and kind of working with organizations that have such a presence in the neighborhood is because, you know, they can help us, you all can help us reach additional community members. So not everybody has the time to participate in these planning meetings. That doesn't mean that our community engagement stops here. So just like Bob's suggestion, Rachel invited us to a fair that's happening in the Tillicum neighborhood. So thanks, Rachel, for that. So if you have any other suggestions of activities or individuals or family fairs that are happening, we would love to hear them so that we can make sure to plan and attend.
Yeah.
Yes, I would think that having some kind of a meeting where you're presenting this to the community members, even providing food, you know, something to draw people in. Food always draws people in. So having something to that nature would be beneficial to getting true community feedback. And the thing about it is that, you know, this group is also represented by what we would consider in the community officials, right? And so there's also a level of building trust there too that has to be addressed.
Absolutely. Just to respond to that, I'll say like our role as consultants in this process is really to be a facilitator of these conversations. And so there's intentionality that Ted and Tiffany are here as well as equal participants in this planning process with everyone else in this room too. And so our hope is that in these meetings we can be a facilitator of having joint discussions and working co-designing sort of what good housing looks like, what does addressing climate change looks like within Lakewood and other topics as needed. To kind of open kind of conversation to everyone else, I'll be curious to ask like, what are topics or questions that you hope that we answer during this planning process as well? Like, is there like a specific topic that folks are primarily interested in, or when thinking about the plan? We'll go to David, and then I'll ask her as well. Feel free to throw your answers in chat too.
Then at some point, somewhere along the timeline, it might be valuable to consider an idea that the vocational college once had, realizing the transportation limitations of Tillicum and Woodbrook. They offered a fiber optic GED and vocational training class, but it failed for lack of a facility. In other words, they believed demographically the people who lived here that were in need of GED and vocational training could not get to the vocational college transportation wise. So they were willing to bring the college to the community by way of fiber optics. But again, for lack of a facility, the idea failed. So just something on the radar that certainly would still be valuable, I think.
Yeah. Thanks, David. We'd love to hear from folks actually who haven't had a chance to speak yet. I guess I'm just gonna, Erin, I know this is our first meeting, but would love to ask you sort of as you're listening in, sort of what thoughts are coming to mind and any specific topics that we could make sure that we're answering during this process.
Well, I, just sort of got invited into the conversation Friday, maybe. So
Yeah.
I am just sort of listening and absorbing, and I'm not sure exactly the history so far with the health department, but and this might speak to some of Tanisha's concerns, but I understand not fully. But we have our Springbrook community of focus, so there's some pretty concentrated efforts there to connect with people living in that community, and so I'm hoping that resource is being utilized or will be utilized.
Yeah.
But that's all I have right now.
Awesome. Thanks, Erin. I know you did join in kind of on the fly, so I'm happy you're here listening today. So Thanks, Brooke. Maybe we'll jump over to Jesse and Jan. I'll be curious, you've worked with us before last year around the climate change element. I wonder if any additional topics or questions you would like to learn more about from the community as we move forward with this plan.
I got to be honest with you, Ben. I'm more interested in the affordable housing aspect of this.
Perfect. Okay.
And also, one thing that's come to light more recently, and that is business engagement. Right now in Lakewood, we have one chain of grocery store, that's Safeway. I would like to see how this plan could actually bring more commercial businesses in, so we have a wider variety in the city.
Yeah. Yeah. You should connect with Ted sometime. I say I'm a huge fan of Ted's work, and that could be a good follow-up conversation. But yeah, affordable housing for sure, without a doubt, is the number one topic, was one of our top topics of focus. Yeah, we'd love to open it up to other folks too. Maybe I'll call on Jason and Alex. We'd love for you all to weigh in as well from your perspective with the master builders and through your work. What are there any questions or topics you want to make sure that we're covering as well? Oh, I don't think your audio is coming through, Jason.
Is that better? Sorry.
Yeah, perfect.
Sorry, I would just want to echo what the last speaker said about affordable housing being important. And then back to what we talked about in the beginning of the meeting with the buildable lands report and just looking at what we can do with density in the city of Lakewood. I grew up in Lakewood. I went to Lakes High School, local guy. So I've seen all the different types of housing we have here. That's one of the things that makes Lakewood one of the largest cities in the state that people don't realize is there's just a ton of awesome apartments and condos and houses just kind of tucked all over. And I just really want to, we can point those things out to people and show the awesome things Lakewood can do when it comes to density in the small area that we have. So affordable housing.
That's great. Thank you, Jason.
Hey, Ben, Mark here. Get the camera turned on for you. So one thing, I know everybody's ultra focused on the affordable housing because that's really just such a monster issue right now. And I will admit on the front end that I still haven't completed the full 254 pages of the current comp, but is there a way we can incorporate, I guess the right word is maybe vitalization or revitalization or refurbishment of the current business infrastructure that we have? There are a lot of properties throughout the footprint of our city that, I don't know necessarily all the reasoning behind it, but when we talk about spreading out even more, are we at least paying attention to or considering kind of helping along and maybe instigating some of that revitalization effort?
Yeah, I know the economic development chapter. Go ahead, Jason.
I think that's a great point. We could, a prime example, there's a restaurant that's been trying to open in Lakewood for a while called Red Carbon. It's over by the old, it's over by the McDonald's. And they've just been they got hit with a bunch of permit snags. And I mean, it's been about over a year and a half for them to open. So I'd be curious to see places like that, which have had the infrastructure to get stuff put up. And it was a Denny's before. So it's not like it wasn't set up to be a restaurant. What the headache for businesses like that was, I'd be curious.
Yeah, that'll add to, I think, as part of thinking about housing growth, job growth is definitely another big topic that we're thinking a lot about as well. Because how do you fit data? I think at the beginning we said around a little less about 9,800 additional jobs coming to Lakewood. And so what those jobs look like and how do we sort of have that fit within the framework of additional housing, having the facilities to support that growth as well. So thanks, Aaron. Good seeing you. I guess we're at time, so I'll just close out by just saying after this meeting, we'll send meeting notes and a copy of this presentation for everyone to review. We will have for our Tillicum group, we'll have our next meeting in October, and we will continue the conversation. I believe our next steering committee for the comp plan will be sometime in the fall as well. And so thank you so much. Tiffany, I'll ask ask for any reflections of what you've learned so far.
Well, first of all, thank you once again, everyone who is with us today and who will be working with us over the next year to get this done. I do appreciate your viewpoints and suggestions as to how to improve public engagement. That's one of the key priorities for the city as this process happens. Again, it was already brought up, but any other suggestions of people and or organizations you think we should be reaching out to get a good, balanced, diverse feedback, we would really appreciate that. Ben just said things will be shared, but the recording and all the materials will also be posted on the city's website. So thank you again.
Thanks, everyone. Hope you have a great week.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Talk to you soon.
Bye. Take care.
Bye.